You're live.
Okay, welcome to our July 17, 2025 Executive Committee meeting. I'm Dave Snyder, Chair of the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission and this committee. I'd like to note that we're starting this meeting at 5:53 p.m. Just a quick reminder, this is an all virtual meeting, and NVTC staff follow the procedures and guidelines in our electronic participation policy to give notice to the commission staff and the public. This meeting is simultaneously being broadcast to the public on YouTube. For those listening on YouTube, if the live stream transmission fails, please contact NVTC staff via email at support@novatransit.org, which will be monitored during the meeting. Since it has been a while since we've conducted an all-virtual meeting, I'd like to highlight a few important reminders. First of all, please keep your cameras on throughout the entire meeting to comply with Virginia Code requirements. You're not counted towards quorum if your camera is off. You may not want to be seen and we may not want to see you, but you don't count for quorum if you turn your camera off. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking to help cut down on background noise. We do have a chat function available, but no public business can be conducted over chat. I will now ask our board administrator, Rhonda Gilchrist, to conduct a roll call for quorum purposes. She will also announce the staff who are participating virtually.
Wanda? Thank you. Please respond with here or present. Chair Snyder.
Here.
Mr. Alcorn.
Here.
Ms. Bagley.
Here.
Mr. DeFrenti.
Here.
Mr. Letourneau. Ms. Palchuk. Mr. Smedberg.
Present.
Okay, we do have quorum. And the following staff are participating in the meeting: Executive Director Kate Mattice, Director of Finance and Administration Scott Kalkorff, Director of Programs and Policy Andrew DeVetter, Board Administrator Rhonda Gilchrist, and Web and IT Manager Melissa Walker. I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thanks a lot. Good evening and welcome to everyone joining our virtual executive committee. Kate, did we receive any public comments this month?
No, Mr. Chair, we did not receive any.
Okay, so next item is we have a meeting summary of the June 5, 2025 Executive Committee meeting before us. We do not have any required action, but we do want to make sure it's accurate. Does anyone have any corrections or comments? Okay, and Kate, if I miss someone's raised hand or whatever, let me know, but I'm not seeing any comments. So the next agenda item for our executive committee is review of the July 17, 2025 NVTC Commission meeting agenda. Kate, will you review the agenda for tonight's meeting?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair, and indeed. So we do have 4 items on our consent agenda this evening. The first one is to authorize the submission of NVTC's Title VI program to the Federal Transit Administration as a recipient. Even a small amount of federal money, we need to demonstrate that we're doing things that meet populations that are English language, limited English proficiency. I knew there was a acronym that could not come into my brain, but anyway, so this is something that we do in terms of the way we do our public outreach. We do have an amendment to our I-66 needs assessment consultant contract. There was no additional money being requested, but we want more work to be done so that our I-66 data is actually really up to date on ridership movement versus what we had in the original contract. We're authorizing the chair to send a letter of support to US DOT for a bus application that PRTC has to the Federal Transit Administration. And the last one is actually seeking authority from the commission so that I can do these letters of support outside of a cycle if I need to for the commission on anything, of course, only projects that are relevant to the NVTC, sort of our mission and functions. So that would be a delegation of authority to me to send letters of support to things like USDOT grant applications. In terms of NVTC action items, we do have the resolution coming back this month on our principles in response to DMV moves. We had a great conversation about that last month. We put it open for more comments. We didn't receive any, so we do want to take action so that we put that in the record, NVTC's priorities so far related to the DMV moves efforts. And then we do have a number of VRE action items. We do have their system plan. We got a big presentation on that last month. So they're coming back. Again, there's no money being requested. This is a plan and a vision for VRE. We also do have, coming back again, mostly because there was some questions at PRTC last month, the amended and restated plan of delegation of authority to the ops board. So that's just come back to NBTC. It did pass at PRTC last week. There's a purchase and sale agreement with Spotsylvania County for a parking lot down there. There's actually no money associated with that transaction, but it would put that in the ownership of the commissions. Finally, we do have some agreements associated with general counsel for VRE as well as NPTC. I know we're going to have a closed session to talk about that. And then some other items that we have going on, always providing updates on SJ28 and DMV moves. We have what we hope is going to be an informative presentation on bus priority and how to make those things happen better in our region, specifically then focusing on Route 7 and our BRT efforts. VPRA is here this evening. They're going to be doing an overview of the latest of all their Transform and Rail Virginia projects that are happening. We have our standard executive director, DRPT and VRE reports. And again, we'll have a closed session as we do in this executive committee. We'll also have that closed session in the full commission. So we have a lot on the agenda. We have a handful of, they're going to have to be roll call votes, but we do also hope we can move through this. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, wow, that's quite an agenda.
It is.
Questions for Kate.
Pack.
Okay, let's see. So Sarah, is there anything about any of the various VRE matters, not the closed session matters, but the other matters that you want to sort of highlight for the executive committee? And I know, Sarah, you've been very busy.
Yeah, it's all VRE all the time lately, it feels like. But I guess we had a pretty lively discussion at NVTC last session, or maybe the time before, on 2050. And I guess I just wanted to flag here, you know, like tonight's the final approval. So the VRE Ops Board had another sort of hour-long conversation about it, you know, what it does, what it doesn't do, what was it guided by at our level. And I'm hoping that Rich, I don't think they intend to go back through all the slides, that sort of thing, but I am hoping Rich, and I assume Mark and or I can see his face, Nick, you know, will be available to sort of answer any specific questions. But I think what I wanted to pass back to this group is, it was passed back to the VRE Ops Board, you know, sort of I mean, concern doesn't feel like the right word, but the need for mindfulness of growth patterns, of, you know, land use, of sort of what's the vision for ridership, you know, and what are we committing ourselves to versus what are we visioning? And I guess the general sentiment I would share to this group is, I think everybody felt strongly that they wanted to be committed to a growth vision for the service, that we're about to invest in the Long Bridge and the fourth track, and, you know, and all these investments. And so we do want to project a growth vision, in part because it will help with the funding conversations. This is, you know, if we're going to talk about sustainability, this is the vision it serves. But I wanted to just assure this group that there was, you know, a substantial dialogue about where did these numbers come from and how often they revised and how good were the past predictions. And I think absent COVID, they'd been pretty good. But I'll pause there. I just kind of wanted to, you know, let y'all know that the conversation here was brought back to VRE, and I assume Rich will reflect some of that tonight. I think I see Paul's hand, Dave, if you want to call on Paul.
Yeah, Paul, go ahead. Thanks.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Sarah, what was there any discussion amongst the ops board about future funding and everything, and operational, you know, important, but was there any discussion longer term, potentially under what umbrella? You know, if you know, based on your ridership and the base of your ridership, is VRE as an entity in and of itself viable into the future, or does it become under a different umbrella, say the state or,
Yep.
some new entity with Mark or, whatever.
Yeah. I think its existence as an entity wasn't really the context that it was talked about. What was talked about is VRE sort of written into its master agreement or its binding documents has this 50-50 split between, its operations is covered half by fares and half by, and we've obviously haven't achieved that since the pandemic, haven't been anywhere close to it. And so the conversation became, some in the room were like, what do we need to do with fares or ridership to get back to that? But then there was this other conversation about, is that still the right framework? I mean, if we're thinking about public transportation differently, right? And it's not necessarily on the backs of the riders that, we see it as a public good that we invest in. Is the 50-50 framework still the right framework? So I think that was more the nature of the conversation, is increasing fares, and we're going to be talking about that Friday at VRE. We're going to start our next budget process, and increasing fares is absolutely on the table. I think it's a question of how much. And then there's also the dialogue about the jurisdictional subsidies and the rate at which they kind of stalled for years during the pandemic and have not caught up to what they would have been absent the pandemic and natural growth. So I'm not avoiding your question, but I don't think we talked about it in the way that sort of you phrased it. We talked about it more.
Yeah, and I may have not phrased, but the current, is the current model viable into the future beyond the economic piece or fiscal piece of it? I'm just wondering, what, or do you go south further? I don't know. I mean, do you have service that runs south and not just always north? I
think frequency is the more so than growth. Frequency, I sense, is what the ops board and this on the staff side is the piece that will get us to the next level. When you ask the riders or you ask non-riders, what would tip you, and it's rarely the price. It's often there isn't a train when I want it. There's that the Kate train, the missing train, but so I think that's the way we're talking about it, is have our traditional shares of the pie, do they make sense moving forward? And what will be the thing to increase ridership? Is it building more, or is it putting more service on the existing infrastructure? And my sense is it's frequency. I mean, I think we've seen it with WMATA Rail. Getting the physical infrastructure fixed up to allow the MARC pass through, I think is also a piece of that puzzle. Because right now there's physical impediments, is my understanding, to having MARC come through Union Station and down into Virginia. Can somebody smarter than me sort of?
Yeah, the trains, they won't. Yeah, people won't be able to walk on the platform and stuff.
Yeah,
right out.
So the other thing I'll say,
but ultimately, is the investment the region or Virginia would talk about, are you going to get a good return? I guess is another way to sort of view things as well, because it's a lot of investment.
It is,
but is that return going to be worth it?
The ROI,
putting it bluntly. I mean,
the ROI on investing in VRE is so much higher than building another lane.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the kind of like conversations we have to be having, is the ridership levels that they're already at. We've already gotten back almost to that lane of traffic value, that where we're at now. That was the metric for a while, that VRE sort of replaced a lane of traffic. And so even at our somewhat reduced levels relative to 5 years ago, we're almost back to that. And so I think as we talk about ROI, we have to be clear about like relative to what. There are going to be more people living here, moving through the region. And so I guess I will leave it with, this is going to be an important piece of the CEO conversation. I think, how are different candidates going to answer answer some of these questions? I mean, how do you see the next 5 years? How are you, where should the investments be made? Where should they be rethought? So it's never a good time to lose a CEO, you know what I mean? And my summer's sort of been blown up, but like, I think this moment for VRE and this moment in our budget process is actually a useful moment to be asking these questions of the candidates.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And you know, and I know some of it is, you know, guessing and predicting what may or may not happen, but I still think they're important
Yeah, agreed.
conversations to have. I mean, because people are going to be asking the questions. Those are some of those questions, for sure.
Yeah, and is it appropriate to refer to this as a plan at a point in time, but that it will need to flex and evolve as the realities evolve? That may be a statement you want to make.
Yeah.
And I think that's getting to Paul's questions, because I think they're probably widely shared, and I think it's important to just say this is something we're endorsing, you know, with the hope that it will become reality, but that it will, by definition, need to change and flex with reality. Does that help, Paul, if she can introduce it that way?
I mean, there's multiple ways to ask the question, but
Right.
People are definitely asking these questions. And I think because of COVID, with, you know, the federal money, and then with ridership and the decline in, you know, federal workers, which is the base of the ridership model, or the foundation of the ridership model, mostly. And as areas of the government shift to certain locations, you know, what does that mean for a group like VRE that has really built its ridership and service on, you know, a lot of federal workers.
But I think that's also where, so I think the other thing that somebody has to say early in the dialogue is this is a vision and not a budget. There's no money associated with this decision. It's, you know, the budget still gets passed every year. A CIP still gets passed every year. And that's where you really make the tweaks and can be responsive. But to your point about commuter ridership, for what it's worth, part of what the Transforming Rail, you know, purchasing and separating everybody does is it allows us to, you know, allows VRE to be something other than that. It, you know, allows bi-directional service. It allows for a different kind of rider. You know, we're not as bound by those windows in the morning, the windows at night. So if that rider doesn't turn out, you know, 5 years from now, 7 years from now, whatever it might be, you know, and return to work and the federal government size, you know, is different than we envision it, then there's some real conversations to be had. But a vote tonight won't bind in any way.
No. I totally understand that, but I just wondered what the board was thinking, you know, or what came up in the conversation, because like Dick said, you know, people are asking these questions. So.
And they're asking it from the jurisdictional subsidy voice as well, you know, so the same way.
Yeah, because I well know when I was on the board, you know, the northern jurisdictions always complain about, you know, they want all the service, but they don't want to pay for it. So,
Okay. Well, to the extent you can address these up front, Sarah, with your comments, that would be great. And then I may come along later and reinforce them. But I think a good record of this kind of thing would be very useful, and I think actually help with the passage. Administrative items, Kate, you've got a fair number of those. You want to breeze through them?
I do, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, we do have some staffing updates that we're working on. We're in the process of hiring a new program analyst. That's a great entry-level position. We've been very successful with bringing people entry-level and giving them promotion potential. So that, and we're also in the process of hiring a senior accountant to really talk about, you know, succession planning and all those good things, is really to put Scott in a good spot in our financial management thoughts. So that's something that we've got actively open right now. When it comes to the fall, you know, we have our cadence of things start getting a little bit crazy in the fall. So a couple things I want to highlight to you is we will have, you know, a September 4th meeting, and we're going to start moving forward. I know, Mr. Chair, I need to talk to you about my own performance review. That kind of launches off in September. You and I can talk offline about that. But we do, we're also hoping to do a little celebration of Mr. Letourneau, and I know he's going to turn on his camera at any moment now, so we know he's part of this meeting.
That's
so
tonight?
we'll be doing that at September. We do plan on having some September committee meetings. So we'll get those sort of in alignment as we move things forward. Probably the really key thing that's a little bit different for this year, because of the way the calendar falls, Yom Kippur would be on our October meeting. We are not having an October meeting. So what it means is we're going to try to be doing a lot of things in committees in September and in October to be able to move forward and take action on a number of things in November and December. So we are not having a meeting that first week of October, but we will be moving forward on a number of different things, whether it be related to the SJ28 and DMV moves actions. We have our own budget development process that's going. We have our WMATA report, call for projects for I-66, a whole bunch of different things. A lot of this stuff is sort of cyclical. We see it in the fall, but because we're missing an October meeting, we're going to see some things sort of a little lumpy in the way they're administered. This year, we do again plan on having a legislative event in December 12th, over at George Mason. So we're just in the process right now of scoping that out. If you recall last year, I think we had close to 200 people. It's becoming a very popular event, and given all the activities that are going on related to potential General Assembly asks, I have a feeling this is going to be a really helpful thing. So that's some of the highlights. I'm always happy to send you, overviews of what we've got going on. But again, as it often is, there's a little brief moment of a break in August, and then we get going full steam ahead. And so that's what I have for an overview of what's happening in the fall timeframe.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments? I know I have one on September 18. I'll be in Canada talking to some folks about natural disaster response and recovery. So and folks, anyone on the executive committee who has any real conflicts with any of these dates, please let Kate know. Well, there's still some flexibility. Any questions or comments for Kate? It's quite a busy fall. Okay, not seeing any closed session. We'll now move into closed session to discuss personnel matters. For the benefit of the listening public, we plan to return to an open session following a closed session. The YouTube feed will continue with it muted and a screen notice stating that we are in closed session. The meeting will resume live when we return to open session. In case of technical difficulties and the live feed is interrupted, viewers should check our YouTube channel for a new feed. After we take the vote, it will take a minute for Melissa to put the commissioners into a separate breakout room, and staff will remain in the main session, so they do not need to do anything but wait for us to return to open session. For this closed session, no staff are participating. Can I have a motion to enter into closed session?
I'd so move.
Okay, so the motion is pursuant to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission Executive Committee moves to convene a closed session to discuss personnel matters concerning appointees of the commission. Walter Alcorn moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Rhonda, did you get the second?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you got the motion and the second.
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Rhonda, please do a roll call vote. We'll have a number of these over the course of the evening.
Yes. Chair Snyder,
Yes,
Mr. Alcorn,
Aye.
Ms. Bagley,
Aye.
Mr. DiFerenti,
Yes.
Mr. Letourneau,
Aye.
Ms. Palchik,
Hi.
Mr. Smedberg.
Aye.
The motion passes. I'll turn it back to the chair.
thank you. The executive committee, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, will now go into closed session. We'll only have commissioners participating in the closed session. So we'll need a confirmation that we're in the breakout room.
right, you're all set.
Okay, I want to make sure that we're broadcasting so the public can hear and see us. Is that right?
It is about a 15-second delay. So very shortly. There we go. You're live.
Okay, we're live and the public can hear and see us. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a motion for the following certification? The Northern Virginia Transportation Commission Executive Committee certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge and with no individual member dissenting at the just concluded closed session. One, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Freedom of Information Act were discussed. And two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed session was convened were heard, discussed, or considered. May I have the motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, Rhonda, will you call the roll on that motion?
Chair Snyder,
Yes,
Mr. Alcorn,
Aye.
Ms. Bagley,
Aye.
Mr. DeFerenti,
Yes.
Mr. Letourneau. Was that a yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I said aye.
Okay. Ms. Palchik,
Aye.
Mr. Smedberg,
Aye.
motion passes.
thank you very much. That motion passed unanimously. Any final questions before we adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, just one quick question. What do you think our end time will be this evening for the main meeting?
Yeah,
Just
right.
curious. Do you have a goal?
I have a goal, but I'll leave it to you as to whether we meet it or not.
I saw Sarah put up 9 fingers, so okay, that sounds good. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks very much. So this concludes our meeting. The main commission meeting will start at 7:00 p.m. on a new streaming link. Please take a moment and make sure your meeting setup is in working order. Thanks again for everyone participating, and thanks for every member of the public that has heard or seen this